It is 6 o'clock. We will call the workshop into order. We have a declaration of a quorum, 7 members present. Item C, public comment.
Any cards?
C1, do we have any cards?
I do not.
With no cards, we will move to item D during the workshop session. Item number 1, Dr. Eagley.
Item 1 is discussion regarding Schlechte Center board training that the board undertook with Mr. Martindale and myself on January 3rd and 4th. First, I'd just like to say thank you to all the board members. You were still, during your holiday break, you gave up an entire Friday and half a day Saturday to come together and talk about the future of the district and to meet with other like-minded school boards from across Texas and across the nation who are involved in great work for the service of students and families in their communities as well. I thought it was a great opportunity for us to get together. What we have for you on the agenda today is just some reflections on that and discussion on maybe what you learned and perhaps directions wanting to move forward from there. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Schaefer.
Okay. At this point, if we can, let's just go through and kind of share our. We haven't had a chance to really speak as individually about this as a group. If we could just take a few minutes and everybody reflect on, I think, what you thought was important during the meeting and what you got out of it, and start it with that.
I'll start. I think was, I guess, most beneficial to me being a new school board member was obviously visiting with the other school boards, not just in Texas, but around the country, because we have some folks there from Georgia and things like that. And just kind of seeing how they, I guess, go into their sessions, how they approach their communities and things like that, and gathering some info on maybe what we can do and adopt to be more engaged and just make us better. So that's, like I said, as a new school board member, to kind of see how others are doing it and then learning from old hats here. It was kind of neat to put all that together and kind of reflect on it.
Sure, we'll go around.
You are so linear.
Well, yes, we are. We like, some of us like a process and a system. And I do say a lot. I heard that on the radio. I have to watch that. So, first of all, I also think it was great that we could all take time out and be there together, spend a day and a half, sit around a table and talk about some of the things that are important for our district, and just also get to know each other a little bit better, and it was good timing as well as we move into the, in the year and everything we have to do as a board together. So that was the first part. The second thing, I just thought it was exciting to be in a room with a whole lot of other folks who were working on other ways to hold our districts accountable. Really working on that community-based accountability, and to see, some districts at different places along the way, to see that we've actually, we're ahead of a lot of districts, but also to see that it's not easy, that it was a lot of hard work. And I think we saw that a little bit on the second day, particularly when we sat down and tried to work through some of the key questions. It's not really easy, but personally, I think it's so important. I mean, I think Schlechte and the team has it right when they say, we should be looking at holding our students to more than a test, and that's what we talked about. And to me personally, I think the tests are still somewhat important. It's kind of like a minimum bar, but that we can go deeper, and community-based accountability helps us go deeper. So to me, it's just exciting to be having that discussion with our district and the other districts as well. One favorite line that I remembered, I liked it when they said it, was the one about, if we want to do something better, if we want to do something different, we can't just tell people to work harder to get there. We have to change the system, and that's kind of I think of it as changing the processes, but really change the system if we want to do something different. So I think that kind of rests on us to some degree to help do that, to find the places where and if and where we want to do something different. Then what do we need to put in place to help the district do that? So anyway, excited. That's a lot for, I know it's a long comments, but there was a lot in a day and a half and a lot to kind of summarize. And I do hope we talk about what we do next steps from here. So
I'm going to jump out of line. Sorry, Mr. Nugent. I know. No, but I'm not ready to comment on what I want to say yet, but just to help everyone out, here and also those that are listening, whenever you talk about, whenever you mentioned the system or the process changing, don't work harder. Do you remember the example that they used? I mean, I remember most of it, but I think for me, talking about that example helps with that a lot, right? Okay, so the example that they used, you guys correct me whenever I mess up, please. I think at Schlechte, they talked about how a school district wanted to see that, or they wanted to increase their extracurricular attendance, right, or participation, right? And so the example they used, they said that, at first they just said, well, the teachers need to work harder. The teachers need to encourage the kids more to be involved and to do, this, that, and the other, right? And then when they actually started looking at it, they realized that was just asking the teachers, that was just piling on more work for the teachers and asking them to do more and to work harder. So then they started asking themselves, okay, what do we actually need to change? And if I remember correctly, they saw that they needed to mess with their bus schedules and with their bell schedules and whatnot. They looked at what could have been the root of why they weren't having as much participation. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Am I remembering correctly? So, and the example, them using that example helped me really grasp that just got to keep looking, right? And think about what could actually be causing that, or what could be affecting, participation. So I just wanted to bring that one.
Can I go out of order too? Because one of the things that's good things about those types of conferences, and the good thing about having a team of 8 with 7 board members and the superintendent and the soon-to-be interim superintendent is people hear different things and they learn different things from those experiences. And I definitely heard and learned exactly what you're talking about, Kimberly. But the other part that stuck in my head was kind of, I don't know if it was the next statement or, from later on in the conference, where you've got to change those processes to, work harder, work smarter, not harder. But at the same time, you can change processes so much and so often that, people can't get good at what they are trying to get good at. And so, just talking about kind of what stuck out to us, that was kind of the follow-up to that part of it that stuck out to me is with staff, with the teaching professionals in the district, letting them get used to programs, letting them get used to things and getting good at it before we change it to something else necessarily. So that was one of the things. The other was what we did a lot of during that day and a half, and which I hope we would do more of, which is kind of self-evaluate as a board with how we handle things, our policies, our procedures, from the way we handle the calendar each year, not the school calendar, but our calendar when we're looking at things and so forth, that's something hopefully that we can kind of attack over the next year or two.
And I just say I very much appreciate your comments because we even talked about it afterwards that I think they used a number of don't change more than 20% of the thing, yeah, or something. And certainly I didn't want to imply that we should be going out and changing everything. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I took away was all of the different ways, the accountability model that we were able to put scenarios through, and then when we were able to do that for our own district and talk about, we are most of us, it's a new board, and we have some transition, and looking at where we go from here and how we hold ourselves accountable as a board to our district's priorities. And what are those priorities? What is our strategic plan over the next, call it 5 years? And so that was super meaningful. I'm looking forward to the work that we'll all be doing coming out of that. But just being able to start that conversation in the framework of that accountability model really stood out to me.
No, I'll definitely go. That's actually the part that really stuck out for me, what Ms. Green was just sharing. Yeah, of course, I love Schlechte every year. And the timing, I think one of y'all mentioned that. It was great timing for us. New year, relatively new board. It was a really good time. A few changes happening around here. It was a good time to get away and to recharge and to refocus a little bit. And I really feel like we did that. But what stuck with me was what stuck out with Ms. Green is that accountability, the tool that they gave us to work through different questions and issues. And it was fun's probably not the right word, but to take an issue and to try to plug it in there and see how we've done with it. And as you mentioned, this whole self-evaluation wasn't always good. Sometimes it was great. We'd plug in some issues we've seen in the last year or two, plug it in there, and we're like, oh yeah, look at that. We were doing it, we didn't even know it. But there were a lot of times where it, we weren't quite as effective. And so it's a great tool going forward, I think, for us to use. But, Mr. President.
I also really appreciate everyone being able to go, because I know that was a commitment for all of us to make over our holiday break. But I also this is my second time to get to go to Schlechte, and I also really enjoy that time together and being able to hear from other school districts. This time I felt like most of the school districts were a lot more similar to us. And everyone had similar mindset about accountability, meaning that I think, and I think I've felt this from everyone here, that everyone feels that state accountability just isn't enough, and that we can be doing more. So it was great to be able to talk about that. But then also, like Mr. Nugent just said, using that engine, I think it was good for us to see that there are some things that we've done well, and according to the tool that they gave us. But there are also areas that we definitely could be working on. So we have some work, just like Ms. Green said, we have some work ahead of us, and it helped us recognize that. So I appreciated that out of that conference. And then I'm trying to think of one of the things that whenever we talk about state accountability versus community-based accountability, which is what this conference was kind of about, one of the things I also feel that there is a place for standardized testing. And someone there, I thought, at least for me, it made sense when he said that standardized testing helps us find trends in our districts, and I think that is true from what I can tell. So there's a place for that, and I appreciated him saying that because it helped me understand that aspect of it a little bit better. And I also like that we talked a lot about, or they talked to us a lot about how with community-based accountability, we're looking into the future. We're not looking at the past always to determine what we need to be doing. I mean, we're looking at the past to inform us, but we're looking into the future because we don't know what jobs we're preparing our kids for right now. So we're trying to teach them to be inquisitive and curious and lifelong learners and all of those great things. So, yeah.
Remember the example he used for that one?
No. Help me.
The driving analogy, right? That when you're driving the car,
yes. How can I forget that one?
Look in the rearview mirror to see where you've been. But a lot of times when we're looking at test scores, it's something that's happened in the past. We're looking backwards. What we really want to do is be looking forward through the windshield and the direction that we're going. But also we got to look at our gauges to know if our systems and processes and things are working right. And that's part of what we put together with community-based accountability is what are those gauges that tell us if things are working. So I like that analogy.
That's a good analogy.
I think y'all hit right where I was going. I think the thing is, where are we going? I think we've had time in the last couple of months last year or two, we're not opening up schools. I think it'd be a good time for us to start mapping out a direction. I mean, it's not mapping it out from administrative point of view, mapping it out from this particular school board, but I think start looking at more strategic planning of the way the district would go regardless of who's in the administration and who's on the board. So I think that probably is the one thing that I saw is coming up with some strategic planning of our future and not being so, a lot of times we've been more reactionary and tried to be more proactive. And I think that's probably one of the things that I think we all got out of this that we're going to spend some future time at. And probably, Dr. Eagley, I'd like to say that it's always good when you go to those conferences and, we get kind of big-headed that, College Station is great, but it's very good to get pat on the back. And there's a lot of people envious of College Station, ISD, and what we've done here. So, I mean, it's really good when you go outside your backyard and get those assurances.
Would you like to talk about maybe perhaps some possibilities of next steps based on the day and a half y'all spent?
You
want to plan on talking more?
We definitely want to plan more, and I guess between you and our new to-be interim superintendent of coming up with some ideas that will engage us into some of this process.
And I think we talked about it a little bit there, just that we would start with our core beliefs and commitments, right? And that making sure we spend some time, especially, again, those are new or back on the board, just really spend some time with those and make sure we clearly understand them and agree with them and support them and then move, use that as foundation for moving forward.
Okay.
I'm curious if y'all had any thoughts. I mean, y'all were both there.
Mr. Martindale?
Anything?
I have lots of thoughts. I do think setting aside some time in the future, so as a team of 8 to continue the conversation, because there were absolutely a number of aha moments. The accountability engine, it showed us some things that we're doing and processes we have in place that are yielding results for us, but there also were some times where we looked at some topics and we could not move through the accountability engine, which we thought we kind of knew, but then the process really didn't exist. So it absolutely the opportunity to sit down and maybe reflect on that some more. I think we need to, as Kimberly just mentioned, possibly start with our core beliefs and commitments. Look at the things we have in place, the community-based accountability system. There's a lot of work that's been done on that to create that document. Look at the 9 pillars of effective boards that Schlecky laid out. See how those correlate to the 7 pillars in the community-based accountability system that Ms. Perry has worked on, and how all of those pieces align with the current core beliefs and commitments. And see if that work that's already in place, it can provide us some direction, or at least the initial begin the conversations of where those things may lead us. Because there's lots of things already there that I think we need to take into consideration and begin to work and see if they fit together and they provide us direction, or once we take that, where do we go with it? So I think there's lots of pieces of excellent work that we can begin our conversations with.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to share, Dr. Ely?
I shared most of that at the beginning, and just appreciate the opportunity to go with everybody and have those deep conversations. It's a little different for me. We've done Schlechte a few times, every other year, every third year over the years. So this was, a little bit different opportunity for me to kind of look back and speak more theoretically and philosophically and pose more questions than maybe I would have in the past. But I appreciate, as I said, everybody's hard work to think about those things and to ponder. And looks like come up with a good process going forward to examine the current theoretical underpinnings with the core beliefs and commitments of the board, and see how that could translate into some more strategic vision being set forth from this group. So appreciate y'all.
Very good. We will move to item D2, consideration and discussion related to board policy FDA local regarding opening participation for non-resident students for certain career tech programs only at College View High School. Dr. Ely.
Mr. Martindale.
That's a quick punt.
Yeah, he's transitioned well. He's transitioned very easily with this here of late. We have spoken a couple of times, several months regarding the Fire Science Academy at College View. Whether a memorandum of understanding approach, and this is transitioning this to a 2-year program, or looking at limited open enrollment. Our last conversation kind of led us to the limited open enrollment possibility for the Fire Science Academy or program at College View only. And when we left that conversation last month was reaching out to TASB, emailed them that evening as a board meeting and asked for them to draft some possible policy language up for us that would allow us to consider non-resident students coming in to attend that specific program. So what you have, I've provided you a copy. Obviously, the language that TASB dropped in there, their policy consultant, is the blue language, is new. A non-resident student wishing to transfer into the district to participate in the district's fire science, career, and technical education program, file an application for transfer. This would be on an annual basis and approved by the superintendent. So they would have to reapply each year if they wanted to continue in that particular program. This language would allow us to consider students on a limited open enrollment basis. And remember, I want to make sure that everyone, and I know this group is aware of this, we have capacity of 36 seats. This would only be allowed or considered for non-resident students in this particular program after all College Station ISD students went through the registration process and articulated or chose and decide if they want to be a part of this program. So we would limit this to whatever capacity we had available remaining in the program after our students went through the registration process. If our students filled up all 36, then there's nothing to consider, because I would not, at this point, anticipating adding capacity to that program with additional staffing based on a non-resident or limited open enrollment process. That language would allow us to consider those students on a transfer into the district. There's some additional language that the policy consultant placed in here at the bottom, whether applicable to this particular situation or not. This is standard language that they tend to keep in policy FDA local. It just, if at any point in time the district chose to charge tuition for non-resident students, they place that information in there. Now, they would become students College Station ISD students at College View High School, so we would be generating ADA revenue for them. This is just policy that they tend to place in there language, if we want to include it or not. Doesn't matter. It's there if later down the road there's anything we want to discuss charging a tuition for, or we can remove it to prevent any confusion. So this is the language that they have provided us for consideration. I think the top piece is very specific. It's pretty straightforward as far as kind of where we've been, the direction we've kind of been going the last few months with the Fire Science Academy at College View High School, and allowing limited open enrollment for that up to the seats that we have available after our students have first run at that. So any feedback, questions as far as any of the language you don't like or do like, or whatever feedback, not looking for any particular action this evening, but pending the conversation we have tonight, it may position us in February to consider whether we want to make this adjustment with policy, and that in turn will allow Mr. Grimes to kind of position himself for this process with the Fire Science Academy and registration here in the next few months.
So it'd probably be good for us to hear any questions or comments that you might have, or perhaps additional information you might like to see in February.
So, sorry, I do think that the part about tuition is confusing, at least to me. I don't know if anyone else, since we're not going to be charging tuition, we don't foresee charging tuition for that. That part's confusing to me.
And yes, we can adjust this however we so choose, and that doesn't have to be there to accomplish what we've been discussing. And if there's ever that conversation down the road, then you can pick that back up and consider it at that time. So it's absolutely an adjustment that can be made easily, and it doesn't impact what we're looking to accomplish.
So I think so correct me if I'm wrong, when I'm understanding, we're only including that said that if we wanted to look at that, it's just there already, and that we wouldn't have to bring it back up to amend the policy.
Correct. Then what you don't have to do, then you're not having a conversation to change policy again. Yeah.
So if I might, our TASB policy consultants look at this policy. We ask them to look at the entire policy of FDA local, with the eye towards educating non-resident students, and they come back with recommendations, and that was their recommendation to add that in there. So in the future, it gives the board and future boards more latitude to be able to do that should the board so choose. I think if you would scroll back up. Transfers shall be granted for one school year on a tuition-free basis is already stated up there earlier in the policy. Mm-hmm. This is just it's a belt and suspenders type of approach from our policies consultants, as Mr. Martindale said. It's something that certainly we could take out if we wanted to, but it was just their recommendation in there. So it really has nothing to do with what is right at issue, which is what you see right there on the screen.
I feel like it should be in there. I guess what I'm struggling with is just the wording of it. Again, I hate to play wordsmith with people that write
the tuition portion of it.
Yeah,
Mr. Sheffield.
I wonder if there could be some future language. Is that where you're going with that? Like
just the
or future stated language, I guess.
I like it in there. I think I'm with them. It's just the way it's worded. And again, in the future, at the board's discretion for some kind of, I think it's just the wording of it that is stumbly.
Yeah, and I'm fine leaving it in there. I definitely don't want to make anything harder on future boards, so.
Maybe if the district, at their discretion, decides to charge tuition, the amount should be set. Maybe.
We can certainly talk with folks at TASB, see if they have some additional wording that's more conditional.
Yep.
That we could look at and see if they would provide that for us as well for discussion in February.
That first phrase is pretty conditional.
Yeah.
I mean, if the district charges tuition. I'm looking at my attorney.
I was watching him over here. He's reached for the button a couple of times.
I agree. I think the condition is set out, so I don't really have any concerns there. But, I do have one concern. In regard to that non-payment provision, if a student transfers in under this policy, obviously the district can initiate withdrawal for if we are charging tuition for payments that are delinquent. If there's disciplinary issues, for example, would the district be able to remove it?
Correct. And so this is how I envision the process in my conversations with Mr. Grimes and Ms. Hester as well. First, of course, if there's an interest, there would be an application process into the program to show interest and some scoring out as far as being accepted into the fire science program, which occurs with existing students, our current district students. Upon acceptance through that application process, then they would submit a transfer request to come into the district. That transfer document, Mr. Ben, that we use for transfers within the district now has language regarding transportation, attendance, behavior. There are statements in that transfer form that address those types of things. For example, someone comes over, enters the district, College View High School to be a part of this program, and they miss X days consecutive. Their attendance they're not coming to school, those types of things. The transfer document has a number of things stated in it that they sign, and we provide a copy back to them, letting them know that they can be removed for those different types of things.
So we handle that at the administrative regulation level.
So the transfer document states those things as far as discipline, attendance, those types of criteria.
That being said, would there be, so for example, in the first added section under exceptions, where it says transfers shall be granted for one regular school year at a time, would there be any benefit for adding, subject to the district's policies that you just described? Is that overkill?
It may be addressed there under factors also. Proving superintendent designee should consider space, instructional staff, and the student's disciplinary history and attendance records. So I guess that's approval of transfer. And I think there's some information here. I'm sorry, let me find it.
While we're looking down the policy, I just would like to point out, Mr. President, that we have a 634, and we have a 640 public hearing scheduled. So just be mindful of the clock. And the staff does have to move these tables out to be able to get us to our other spots.
It's noted in the transfer agreements. That's what they sign off when they submit the transfer request to come into the district.
I do have a quick question. So we're granting for 1 year only, but it's a 2-year program. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the risk for the student is that there may not be room that second year. Or is there any
thought of that,
assurance?
but I think in that particular case, if they finished on good terms, we would work to recognize the second year so we're not booting a kid out of the system. And if it presses our capacity by a few kiddos, then I think that's something we work with Mr. Grimes to address.
Would it be even possible to have, obviously if there's 36 or 18 in that for the first year?
That's true. I'm not sure that situation could even occur,
right,
because they're going to be on a double block 1 to 2. Correct.
Okay.
Prerequisite.
Because because you're only talking 1 year back.
Because the prereq would have to be year
that
one.
they completed the previous year.
Okay.
Correct. So that
Thank you, Mr. Nugent.
that situation could not occur.
All right, thank you.
Is there any information you'd like to bring back for next month?
I think if you can just double check, see if the wordsmiths want to change anything under words down tuition. But other than that, we look forward to seeing it at next month's meeting.
Okay.
With that being it, we will adjourn.